You know that feeling, right? When trust has just completely broken down in a relationship, where every motive gets questioned and there's just this suspicion hanging in the air. It's such a universal human problem. And believe it or not, it's right at the heart of this ancient letter we're about to dive into.
The scholar, Dr. Ayo Adewuya, just nails it with this quote. He calls it an entanglement. It's like this messy knot of misunderstanding, and you feel totally trapped. Well, that is exactly the crisis the Apostle Paul was facing with the church he cared about deeply, the one in Corinth.
So, what do you do? I mean, really, when a relationship is that broken and your own character is being attacked, how do you even begin to fix things? That was the big question Paul had to answer. And his response, honestly, it's a masterclass in leadership.
So here's our game plan. We're going to walk through Paul's defense step by step. We'll start with the crisis itself, then look at how he reestablishes his authority, his really surprising take on suffering, and how he defends his own integrity. And then we'll see what it all means for us today.
All right, so first up, the crisis. Let's just set the scene. Paul's relationship with this church in Corinth, it's on the rocks. They're questioning his motives, his leadership, even the very foundation of his calling. The air is just thick with suspicion.
Okay, so before Paul can even defend his actions, he has to tackle a much bigger question. Basically, Paul, why should we even listen to you at all? He has to rebuild the very foundation of his authority.
And here's where he draws a really sharp line. See, Paul argues that his authority doesn't come from any human system. It's not because he got voted in or got a promotion. No, he claims it comes directly from God, a divine appointment, an unforgettable encounter. And what that means is his ultimate judge isn't the people in Corinth, it's God.
This African proverb, which Dr. Adewuya points out, just perfectly captures Paul's mindset. His main concern isn't pleasing the people he's sent to. His main concern is being faithful to the one who sent him. That's where all his conviction comes from.
So, after he establishes his authority, Paul takes this really surprising turn. He doesn't try to downplay all the hard stuff he's been through. Instead, he puts it front and center and completely reframes it in a powerful way. I mean, get this. In just this section of his letter, Paul uses words for afflictions, trials, and suffering at least 29 times. He's not running from the pain at all. He's leaning right into it. But here's where it gets really interesting.
For every single mention of suffering, he talks about comfort or consolation twice. That's 58 mentions of comfort. So this isn't a story about being a victim. It's a story about a divine comfort that so totally overwhelms the pain he's going through.
Now look at this. This is such a radical claim. He says, if we're being afflicted, it's for your consolation and salvation. His suffering isn't just about him. He's saying it has a purpose for the whole community.
And here's how it works. It's a cycle. Paul goes through something tough. God comforts him in it. Then, that very experience of being comforted equips and empowers Paul to then comfort the Corinthians when they're struggling. His personal trial becomes a shared resource.
This quote just sums up the whole idea perfectly. No suffering is wasted. Paul truly believes that if God permits a hardship, he's got a purpose for it, and that purpose is often way bigger than just one person.
So, after laying all this incredible theological groundwork, Paul finally pivots. Now he's ready to address the specific thing that started this whole crisis, a direct accusation against his personal integrity.
And the complaint, it almost seems kind of trivial, right? Paul had said he was going to visit, but then he changed his plans. So his opponents jumped on this, accusing him of being fickle, unreliable, basically saying one thing and meaning another. You just can't trust the guy, they said. Paul's defense is so clear. Using an analogy from Dr. Adewuya, he's basically saying, hey, I'm not a chameleon. His character is consistent. He doesn't just adapt his colors to his surroundings or try to manipulate people. With him, what you see is what you get.
And then he reveals the real reason. And it completely flips the script. The reason he changed his plans wasn't because he was fickle. It was out of pastoral care. He didn't come because he wanted to spare them a really difficult disciplinary visit. His choice was actually an act of love.
And see, this is what it all boils down to for Paul. He's defending this core idea of integrity. His life, his message, and his actions, they're all woven from the same cloth. He means what he says, and he says what he means. That consistency is the absolute bedrock of his leadership.
So, what does this ancient argument teach us today? Well, Paul's defense offers some seriously timeless lessons on leadership, on trust, and on how we face hardship.
So what are the big takeaways here? Well,
It kind of boils down to this. First, for any kind of leader, integrity is just non-negotiable. Second, the hard stuff we go through isn't wasted. It can actually become a resource to help other people. And because of that, maybe we should be a little slower to judge other people's motives, because we hardly ever know the full story. It also reminds us that true authority comes from a deeper calling, not just a title. And that ultimately, the best leadership choices are always guided by genuine love and care for others.
And all of this leads us to one final thought. Paul offered a brilliant explanation, for sure, but his whole defense really rested on his life of integrity. So it leaves us with this question to chew on. When trust is broken, what's actually more powerful? The explanation you give or the character you've already built?